Good hello friends, my name is Mel and welcome back to my channel. So we're going to talk about all the audiobooks that I've listened to in the first half of the year. This video is quite overdue considering the fact that it is October as I'm filming this, but I realized that I've consumed probably at least half of my books that I've read this year as audiobooks, and I feel like it's gonna be a lot for when it comes to the end of the year, so I'm gonna split it up into two parts. We're gonna talk about all the books that I've read between January and July, because I didn't read anything in June, and then the next video that you'll get towards the end of the year will be from August all the way till the end. So without further ado, let's jump into the first book that I read in January. So the first book that I read in January is The X-Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This isn't her debut. This is actually the second book that she came out with, and it's her most popular thus far, and it was wonderful. This follows Shay Goldstein and Dominic Yoon, who are on this talk show, and they're essentially fighting for this top spot. They end up actually having this top spot together, which forces them to work together. Of course, we love a good enemies to lovers romance, which is exactly what this book was. It was so much fun. The show is called The X-Talk, hence the title of the book. It's where two exes deliver love advice, just like stories from when they were dating, etc. However, the manager of the show decides that they're going to make Shay and Dominic the exes, even though they've never dated. Of course, this leads them to falling in love, and it was so good. It was so much fun. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't mind-blowing in terms of like the hate to love relationship. It developed, I think, really naturally, and it was exactly the kind of like swoony stuff that I was needing. It made me roll my eyes because, you know, typical romance makes you roll your eyes sometimes, and like sometimes it's unrealistic, and that's okay. I will say the transcripts as an audiobook, like listening to transcripts read to you, can get pretty annoying, and it kind of distracts from the overall vibe of the book, but it wasn't so bad where it was like, you know, make or break. It was just a little bit annoying. Same way that the Illuminate files are when it comes to audio. Like, you don't want to hear Shay blah 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 blah, Dominic blah 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 blah. Like, you want to hear just their voices. And I will say the, I guess, like plot twist slash the, you know, you're 3/4 of the way through the book and something has to go wrong. It's like the self-destructive miscommunication, and of course it has to happen in order for the book, you know, you need some sort of conflict, but it's one that's kind of overdone, which is why I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It didn't take away from my enjoyment. It takes up like this much of the book, but I still had such a good time listening to this, and very, very good for one of the first books that I read this year. The next book that I read in January was Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. I also really enjoyed this book. However, I did give it like a 3.5 out of 4, 3.54 out of 5 stars. We're following Ruthie and Teddy in this story. Ruthie is this super sweet, very much so in her happy little bubble of things that she's used to doing. She works at this retirement home, and she has such a great time with all of the residents there. And Teddy, who is the son of the owner of the retirement home, comes in, walks in all nonchalant. You know, he's kind of a disappointment to the family, and the reason that he's at the retirement home is because he's kind of being forced to take responsibility for whatever his future might be. It kind of forces him to grow up. So the two of them end up living right next door to each other, so we love a little close proximity romance. Forced proximity, more likely. But this book was so much fun. It really was like two people falling in love and embracing all of these sweet little elders around them. It was super wholesome. You've got turtles, tattoos, old timers, all of the great things that you could be possibly asking for. And again, did I love the conflict? No. Could I get past it? Sure. But I didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to. However, it still was a really good time, and honestly, I enjoyed the experience so much, and I was smiling so much throughout the entire book, just laughing, and my heart just felt really good listening to these characters interact, and kind of seeing Teddy's tough exterior breakdown and seeing Ruthie really let down her walls and explore and get outside of this bubble. Like, it just felt really good. Now, jumping into the month of February, I read The Dating Dare by J.C. Lee, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. This is actually book 2 in the Sweet Mess series, duology, trilogy, I don't know. She's coming out with books still. I didn't realize that it was book 2 in this series until like after I looked on Goodreads, because I felt like something was off when I was listening to it at the beginning, in terms of there was more story there that I didn't fully understand, but it was still easy enough to jump into that I was like invested right away. So we meet Tara, who is the owner of the bar in God, what was the name of the city? It started with a W. Somewhere in like up the coast of California. And the love interest, his name is Seth. He is the youngest brother of Landon, who is one of the main characters in the first book. Fun fact, I just finished the first book, so all of the context makes sense now. Seth is a photographer who is going to be going to Paris really soon, and when he meets Tara, neither one of them are like, I don't want to jump into a serious relationship if I have to go. So they make a dare to date essentially the entire time that he is there. They'll go on a couple dates and see what happens, and obviously they fall in love. I had so much fun with this book. I definitely think I had a lot more fun than I was expecting to initially as well. And one of the things that JC Lee does a really good job of is making things cheesy, but like in a fun, consumable way. I have so much fun reading her books. I kind of think I like book 2 more than I liked book 1. This series tends to have really polarizing thoughts. Like either you really enjoy it or you really think it's like too cheesy and it's too crap. So I feel like this is one of those like feel-good books where you kind of know what you're going into when you're reading it. Like objectively, it's probably closer to like a 3-star because it's not the most romantic of romantic, but I also rate in terms of my experience. So I gave this a 4 out of 5. I had a lot of fun reading it, and I think anybody who picks it up will. We're at this little small town, going around dating, kind of sneaking around a little bit, and it's good vibes. It's good vibes. And fun fact, as I was listening to book 1, being able to see the small glimpses of the characters in book 2, like the connections are perfect, and I think JC Lee does a really good job of elongating the story internally without it being too distracting. And she introduces a lot of secondary characters that would be perfect for sequels that I'm really looking forward to kind of hearing more about. I almost want to re-listen to The Dating Dear because I had so much fun with it, and then I obviously just read A Sweet Mess, so kind of seeing the story go on as it should would be probably good for me, but still had so much fun reading this. Again, reviews are really mixed on this one. I really enjoyed it because I knew what I was going into. So if you go in expecting like a mind-boggling romance of, ooh, this and this, like, don't get disappointed. So I didn't listen to any audiobooks in March, but I did in April, and I read Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I literally don't even have a review up for this on Goodreads. I don't remember this story at all. I remember just trying so hard and giving Sally Rooney another chance because I read Normal People, and while I have an iffy experience with Normal People, which you can go check out the cards for my video on that, I cannot recall Beautiful People, Where Are You? Beautiful World, Beautiful People, whatever the name of this book is. I can't tell you a single thing about it. Like, I went to go recap the book and I don't remember it. Now, I don't know if that's because I was so disinterested in the book and the writing style that I was like, okay, well, I just kind of flew through this book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I don't remember why I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I don't know. I feel like this one, really hard miss for me, where I didn't hate it clearly enough to give it a 1 or DNF it, but I didn't love it either. I read it, but does it count if you don't remember it? I don't know. Now on to one of my favorite romance books, one of my favorite audiobooks that I listened to this year. It Happened One Summer by Dessa Bailey, which is book 1 in the Bellinger Sister series. I love Brendan and Piper so much. I love Westport so much. I love the town, I love the setting, I love the idea of taking this frantic party girl, throwing her into a seaside city, and having her fall in love with fishermen. I loved every part of this book, including the conflict. So Piper is this sweet, spoiled girl who is sent off to go to Westport kind of as a punishment for being this crazy party animal in the young LA space. She gets a hard reality check when she's up in Westport, realizes that her life isn't what she thinks it is. Her mother is a Westport resident, and you can really see where her heart comes from when she's in Westport. Her stepdad is the one who sent her away, and one thing leads to another, and she gets to fall in love with the seaside city. She gets to fall in love with Brendan. You see somebody like Brendan who has his issues, yes, like he is very reserved, he has his own goals and his own ambitions, which is so notable, but he doesn't let people in. And so Piper starts to break down his barriers while Brendan keeps her in check. I think they had a really great dynamic, something that like you can see would build up throughout the years into something incredible. Now, when it came to the conflict, I feel like it was one that made sense. It was something that challenged both of their developments, and I think it made each other stronger at the end of the day. Like, yes, you know, a relationship is going to have its tough points. It's gonna have moments that are gonna make you want to break, but it's how you kind of get through those points. I think they did a really good job. Tessa Bailey does a great job of just bringing that all together into this amazing world. All of the secondary characters, which appear in book 2, which also loved, are just great supporting characters to our main characters. I had such a good time with this, and I'm really tempted to buy the physical versions of it because I feel like I need to have it on my shelves because I enjoyed it that much. It has such a big place in my heart already. I could reread this book as like my comfort for years, I feel. And finally, to wrap up the first half of the year, I read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, which also one of my favorites this year. I gave this a 4.5, kind of rounding it up to a 5 stars, but I'm going to leave it at a 4.5. We have our main character who hops on to the subway train, and she meets this very particular individual. And what she doesn't know is exactly who this individual is and why she doesn't transcend time. So we get to see a really cool, like almost fantastical romance story come to life. Casey McQuiston does a great job of taking you through the ringer. She puts you through every possible emotion. I love Casey McQuiston's writing style. It definitely had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. August and Jane are just the cutest like duo, and seeing everything unfold the way that it did, and Casey McQuiston really does a good job of setting the scene for you. You get immersed into exactly where they are. I almost felt like I could smell everything, I could visualize everything if I just closed my eyes, and it was just great. Like, it felt very atmospheric, and the plot moved so well. We got to see certain levels of acceptance where I feel like other authors would write a little bit more immaturely. And while I do think August did have her moments where I was like, dude, just like take a minute and like step back and breathe and get away from your emotions, I think it folded over really nicely. You have a bit of relentless sass, a found family, some mystery sleuthing, and it is the recipe for success, I think, for this book. And again, so much fun. A really unique title, I think, and one of the first books that I just felt immediately drawn into. I feel like all these other books that I mentioned today had their moments of like, it's taking me some time to build into, but this one I felt like I just like jumped right in. So love this, definitely give this And It Happened One Summer a read. So that is it. As you can see, there's quite the trend. I read a lot of romance books over audiobook, and honestly, I think it's one of my favorite ways to consume them as of recent. Romance books over audio translate really well. Yes, do I sit in my car and scream? And I'm not joking you, like I will sit at my wheel and scream when things get smutty. And is it absolutely hilarious for me to be sitting here like flustered out of my mind, driving on the 101 in traffic? Yes. Do I still love doing it? Absolutely. So I've had a lot of fun this first half of the year really listening to some of my favorite books, I think, ever. I found that if I listen to romance books over audio, it's a really great break from some of the heavier books that I might be reading, or just some of the chunkier ones. It'll help break things up for me, and it makes me feel extra productive on my way to school or wherever it is I'm commuting to. So I've had such a great time listening to my romance books. I will be continuing to listen to my romance books throughout the end of the year because I think romance it's the place to be when it comes to the audio space. I feel like fantasy books get a little too hectic and there's too much world building that you might miss out on. If you're gonna take anything from me today, romance books are the way to go when it comes to audio, and I think they're probably the only books that I'll be reading over audio. I think this latter half of the year will prove that as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And until then, I'll catch you next time.